producers, D.V. De Vincentis and Robert Siegel. Star and executive producer, Seth Rogen.
Love that guy.
Starring as Tommy Lee, Sebastian Stan. And joining us virtually are directors Gwyneth Horder-Payton and Hannah Fidel. There they are, and starring as Pamela, Lily James. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so I want to start with DV and Robert, first of all. As showrunners and executive producers, tell me why now was a time to tell this story, and what kind of research went into deciding to do this now?
Well, in terms of why now, I think the story should have been told a long time ago, to be honest. And certainly has had its place any time since, but the truth behind this story, I think, lands quite differently now because so many things have so many similar situations have followed it that have been more sort of contrived or calculated, whereas this was a real, this was a crime and a theft, you know, it wasn't a setup. It also was this thing that was the first, you know, celebrity sex tape, even though it was a stolen tape and a private tape. It was the first viral video, and it was the first thing to sort of break the internet. And I think we're at a point now where the internet's about to start meaning something else, and it's interesting to look at this now.
And it just touches on, you know, celebrity, technology, privacy, all these very relevant issues. So it's kind of a great canvas to explore all that stuff.
It's an extraordinary story. I mean, I personally had no idea, and I mean, I was a child when this happened, but I totally swallowed the tabloid view that we were all fed, and it's extraordinary what was really going on behind all of that, the kind of furore around it. But before we get into talking about this more, there's so much to say, but we've got a clip to show everyone first. So. What an extraordinary scene, incredible performances, it's just stunning. Lily, for you, I'm really interested about what you feel this story of Pamela, and it tells us about exposure, and maybe even where we are now with things like social media, because I feel like Pamela was kind of the guinea pig for that experience of having that intrusive exposure that wasn't just accidental, it was without her consent. So how do you feel that reflects where we are now? We've kind of gone on a down trajectory, I think, but what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what happened, you know, that we're exploring in this huge violation and exploitation of their privacy sort of, and coinciding with the birth of the internet, has shaped our very unhealthy obsession with media and celebrity. And I feel like, unfortunately, with social media and stuff, we've all just become even more desensitized, I think. And I mean, you see it all the time, the ways that people are treated online and the things we say, it's just without any care or humanity or empathy. And I think our show is trying to look at all of that and to hold us all accountable. And it's so weird watching the scenes again, because I haven't seen this for so long, you know, it feels like a long time ago, but when you get to say words that matter that much, and I think as a woman, I felt every bit of it so deeply, and unfortunately I think it's a situation that's happened to so many different people, and so I think in even tiny ways, you know, and I think it was just so powerful to get to explore this role and everything within it. Yeah,
I feel like your performance really empowered everybody's vision of who Pamela is, which is so important to recognize. Sebastian, I was really interested just also to follow on from what Lily said, that what it felt like for you to get up close to that story, and did it have an effect on you? I mean, for me watching it, I felt a lot of anger for Pamela. Did you feel that yourself, and did you kind of see, wait, we've all been duped, this was not what was really going on.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think both Lily and I felt tremendously protective of them as the story continued, and really making sure that that sort of bond between them, that intense connection, never wavered. Sort of felt like the heartbeat throughout their story, their journey. Obviously, as these things are incoming, but it definitely makes you think, certainly on an empathetical level, and makes you wonder what that might have been for them. But obviously, we'll never truly know. I mean, she was pregnant. She was trying to be a mother. They were trying to be parents. However way you decided, the media decided to look at them or spin them, they certainly had reputations and personalities and very different, but at the same time it was the human being that I think was getting lost in the narrative. And it's true, it's been happening since, and we've become only more desensitized, in my opinion. We just don't, there seems to be sort of like this entitlement that's kind of come as of recent years with, well, if you're just out there, then you're public property. I can just do and say whatever I want. It doesn't matter, what you're experiencing, what you're going through. And so, where is the balance of that now? What are perimeters anymore? And where is our empathy is sort of, I think, something we constantly have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, that's very well put, thank you. Now we have another clip we're going to roll. Such amazing acting. Lily and Sebastian, we talked in the previous panel with the hair, makeup, costume, everybody, prosthetics, about your transformations. Can you walk us through what it was like for you? Maybe start with Lily, but also, and by the way, the thing that you even had to wear a fake forehead, I could not get past that. Can you talk us through your transformations, but also how you got into the character? Because Sebastian, I believe that there were very specific things that maybe your acting coach had told you, but we'll get to that. So Lily, could you kick us off?
Kick us off, yes. So it was about a 4-hour process. I had this forehead, and I had teeth, and I had eyes, and the breastplate, which we didn't use all the time, actually, thankfully, because that made the process a lot longer. But it was, honestly, I really enjoyed having that time, and I needed it every day, because I would do all these, Pam just speaks fast and has great articulation, and so I would do loads of tongue twisters, and I would watch, Sebastian and I both made montage videos of all of Pam and Tommy and interviews over the years, particularly from that time, and so I would just watch every day a 2-hour movie of Pamela in the morning because I was getting ready, and then so it kind of felt like it took me 4 hours to get there, as well as this crazy bodily transformation, including being spray tanned head to toe every day. But it was insane. When I looked in the mirror, I just didn't see myself anymore, which turns out is really helpful when you're acting, because you just sort of aren't getting in your own way at all. You don't see yourself, your insecurities, your own habits, your own everything. So it just felt very freeing and and then to look at Sebastian and just see Tony Lee in front of me, it all felt so real. Yeah.
And Sebastian, without being too personal, when I referred to your acting coach, what I meant was, I believe that...
Steel.
Yeah, the steel balls, sorry. Because he had worked with Helen Hunt, right? And he had told her when she played a waitress to put coins in her shoes so that she would look like she was in pain.
Yeah,
and that gave you this idea.
Well, look, it all has to do with the tremendous amount of fear that both she and I were feeling up to this camera test that happened in April, because until sort of everything was on, I think both of us, we talked a lot about this, and we would check in, and we'd be like, I just don't know if I can see this, and if I can't see it, then no one's going to see it. So, unfortunately, once we got to that camera test, and thanks to hair and makeup and costumes. Like, I mean, it really came alive at that point. And then those guys seemed excited when we were walking towards the camera test, and we were like, okay, you know, if they're good, then we're on the right path. But it was, for me, it was just more that confidence. And look, there's no textbook for how you approach anything. You know, everything is different. And at one point, he said, you know, maybe you need to remind yourself of when you walk into a room, you're a guy who's been famous and successful at a very young age, who, you know, carries around, you know, some weight down there. Maybe you might want to actually do that. So then I just tried it, and then I had costumes build me at a specific place. And you know, that was that. But there were little things like that. It was the first time I had ever worked with like a earpiece. I've never done that before, because it was his energy level had to be so high all the time. And when I was like looking at videos with him all the time, I just realized like it's as if he never stops. He's like always playing the drums even when he's not. You know, it's just like there's always a song going on. So then I would put this earpiece in during the scenes and play music basically off my phone. So I'm always like just hearing music, and that really helped me out.
That's extraordinary. That explains some of his kind of manic energy, which is insane actually to watch.
And also not eating helps a lot. Just don't drive anywhere in LA.
And now we're going to roll another clip. And he's so sad. But I kind of love him because he's this kind of philosopher character, but he's up against it. His life is not going well, and it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, it doesn't work out for Rand. But nor should it necessarily. Yeah, he's a bummer.
Major bummer. And I know you and I talked about this before, but I think you didn't get to meet him, but I think you said that he's a weed farmer in Oregon or something?
I think he is, yeah. So I might have met him, just through this line of work, yeah.
So as star and executive producer, tell us about bringing it to the screen with both those hats on, in a way, and then why you also wanted to do this project so much. What was it about it?
There's a few things. I should first say this hair is for a role. I feel like I need to personally explain that to everyone. I'm playing a guy having like a midlife crisis, and in turn, I look like a guy having a midlife crisis. And it is, you know, it's a weird job we have at times. So, it's, you know, that's where we're at. But, yeah, it's a story, you know, it's largely based on this Rolling Stone article where kind of the whole story was filled out for the first time, and I had a similar experience to I think what you were describing, where I was, you know, young when the tape came out, and I had like a very what I thought was clear perspective of the story behind it, and then I realized that I had a completely different my perspective was wrong, and that I did not know the truth, I did not know the full story, and the fact that I didn't just spoke to so many cultural things that are so relevant. The fact that this just like, even as we were casting the show, I remember showing up to rehearsals and the other actors would be like, she didn't release the tape herself? I'm like, no, the whole part of the show is that like to this day people didn't realize it, you know? And every time someone said that, it just spoke more and more to like what I thought was highly interesting about this show, is how this entire kind of like cultural false narrative was like accepted in a lot of ways and kind of permeated to the time that the show was released, essentially. And so that's why I think like globally I thought it was a very interesting story. I thought the characters were incredibly fascinating. And I also am a huge fan of kind of like dumb guy crime movies, I guess. And there's like a whole side of this that is very much that, of this kind of like bumbling in over their head, you know, person who really feels like they're in the right even though they couldn't be more wrong, and really feels like they have a smart plan even though they couldn't have a more stupid plan. And I found that out to be a very interesting character, and it was not like anything I'd really done. And as we were making this, as we were developing it, the fact that I was going to play him was not. It doesn't really come up. I kind of will make these things up. We'll develop them and then see if I fit into them by the time we're trying to sell them, essentially. But it seemed like I could play that role, and yeah, it was an interesting role to play. That was, I think, something I grappled with, was how sympathetic to make him. I know inherently, for better or worse, and I come across sympathetic on screen. If you met me, you would hate me, trust me. But on screen, I know that I can make characters quite likable, and that was something that I was trying to thread the needle with, of how kind of dislikable versus, unlikable versus sympathetic this character should be, and I didn't think he should be overly sympathetic, but at the same time, I think it's interesting to understand where he's coming from, which was, not the best place, but if you're, but it take him a truthful place, which was, he thought he was wronged by the universe and stealing these people's, comically large safe. That would somehow correct things, but that's not what you should do.
I mean, he does do a terrible thing, but you're right. You can't help liking him, and you struck a great balance because he's likable, but also just a disaster. And I love it works because we see him as a child, and then we can ultimately understand why he is the way he is, which is just such a perfect little flashback. We have one more clip to show everyone, so let's see that now. Gwyneth and Hannah, as directors, I'm really interested in hearing from you about how you approached a story that's about voyeurism, misogyny, objectification of women, and you bring the female gaze to a story that hasn't experienced that before. What are some of the ways in which you each approached your respective episodes with that in mind?
For me, in several scenes, particularly with the lawyer and Tommy, I tried to make it that Pamela was not part of the team. So there's a separation always. And so she would be isolated either from the male point of view in the background, or I think the last scene I did with them where she was almost in the background and you were in her head. So for me, that was, in terms of framing, that's what I was trying to do. And also from her point of view, looking back at all the men looking at her, which is in the lawyer's office.
Uh-oh. We lost you. We can't hear you. Oops.
Uh-oh.
Tech fail for a second. No, we can't hear you. Oh no.
Uh-oh.
While we work this out.
Oh dear.
Oh no, you're back. You're back. You're back.
I'm back. Yeah, it's my thing for going in and out. Okay. I don't know. Did you hear most of that? Okay, then that's enough.
Oh, that's it. We missed the last sentence.
Oh, the last sentence. I don't remember what it was. It was not part of the scene. Even in the whole process, she was still being objectified. She was still being looked at as this object. She was not being taken seriously. It was painful.
And what about the other episode that we could talk about?
Well, I think for episode 6, that was such a Pam-centered episode that I went in really with the idea that this was going to have a different pace and feel to it. And luckily, the guys, hi guys, I wish I could with you. They were so accommodating with that, and I think everything was thought of in a very sympathetic way, and also, having Paola, who's such an incredible DP, as a partner, and having, it sounds corny, but like the sort of girl power trio, really was special and I think made this stand out. And the reason why I chose that clip actually was because Lily is so obviously fantastic in the role, but she's also, you know, able to do so much without dialogue. And it's just in the moments of silence, I think, that some of the best performance, at least in this episode, it comes out. And so I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Fantastic work. Yeah. And just to wrap it up, perhaps Dee and Robert could address this, but what do you hope that audiences take away from watching the story and understanding the other side of something that we've been told very differently before?
I would say, by the way, it's funny, my high school English teacher also taught me that balls in the underwear trick. I would say that I would hope that people, first of all, I hope people have a really enjoyable, fun time watching it. But underneath that, and Rob and I both individually and together really drawn towards things that are really fun, but underneath have something going on that's about the world that we're in. And in this case, I hope people understand the idea of accountability a little bit better. I think that maybe the worst thing about the internet is that it's allowed people to be the worst of themselves and get away with it because they never are accountable in any way. And I think that you can see that in what Rand goes through. You know, Rand is he means well, he thinks the world's supposed to work in a certain way. It doesn't, and he does not recognize that he is accountable for what goes on. And I think that everybody in the story outside of Pam and Tommy kind of suffer from that as well. Yeah, that's what I hope people will get out of it a little bit.
I'm good with that answer.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming out today to talk about this fantastic show. Let's give them a round of applause.